It was a cold November night in the small town of Ravenswood, the kind of night where the wind whispered secrets through the trees and shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far. Detective Clara Hayes tightened her coat as she stepped out of her car, staring at the grand Victorian house before her. The yellow crime scene tape fluttered like a warning in the breeze. She could already feel the weight of the case pressing down on her shoulders. Inside, the body of Emily Carter lay lifeless on the floor of her study room, filled with books, fine art, and the faint scent of lavender. Her husband, Richard Carter, stood outside being questioned by officers, his face pale but composed. Too composed, some might say. Clara knew this case would be anything but ordinary. Richard and Emily Carter were known as the perfect couple around town. Wealthy, charming, and seemingly madly in love, they had been married for 10 years. Richard, a successful real estate developer, often hosted lavish parties at their home. Emily, a former journalist turned philanthropist, was admired for her kindness and elegance. But perfection, Clara had learned over her 20 years on the force, was often just a facade. As she entered the study, Clara took in every detail. The shattered glass of red wine on the floor glistened under the dim light, its crimson hue eerily reminiscent of blood. The overturned chairs suggested a struggle, though there were no signs of forced entry. And then there was the note clutched tightly in Emily's hand, a single sentence scrawled hastily. "You promised." Clara frowned. Promised what? It was vague, but it carried an undeniable weight. Whoever wrote those words clearly knew something or someone that mattered deeply to Emily. Richard claimed he'd been working late at his office when Emily was killed. His alibi checked out, at least on paper. Security footage showed him leaving the building around 8 p.m., which gave him enough time to drive home and commit the murder. But there was no concrete evidence tying him to the crime, no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing. Clara wasn't convinced. She decided to dig deeper. Her first stop was Emily's laptop, found locked inside her desk drawer. With the help of the tech team, Clara accessed its contents. What she discovered sent chills down her spine. Dozens of emails between Emily and an unknown sender discussing Richard's infidelity. The affair had gone on for months, and Emily had planned to confront him that very night, but the final email stood out. It read, "If you don't leave him, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." The sender's address was untraceable. Clara's next move was to visit Richard's secretary, Laura, who seemed unusually nervous during questioning. Laura had worked for Richard for 5 years and was known for her efficiency and loyalty. But something about her demeanor didn't sit right with Clara. After pressing her further, Laura finally broke down and admitted that Richard had asked her to forge documents placing him at a meeting earlier that evening. "He said it was important," Laura stammered. "I didn't think." With this new information, Clara requested a search warrant for Richard's phone. Hidden deep within its deleted messages was a thread between him and an escort service. One message stood out. "Make sure she doesn't talk anymore." Confronting Richard, Clara laid out the pieces of the puzzle. "You hired someone to silence Emily permanently after she threatened to expose your double life," Clara said, her voice steady but sharp. "But you underestimated her determination and mine." For a moment, Richard just stared at her, his composure cracking under the weight of the truth. Finally, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. "She was going to ruin me," he admitted bitterly. "Everything I built, all those years, I couldn't let her take that away." Richard Carter was arrested that day. As he was led out of the station in handcuffs, reporters swarmed the scene, capturing every word of his fall from grace. Meanwhile, Clara returned to the quiet solitude of her office, reflecting on how easily trust could shatter and how even the most polished facades hid the darkest truths. But the story didn't end there. Days later, While reviewing the case files one last time, Clara noticed something she had missed before, a small detail buried deep in the forensic report. A partial fingerprint on the wine glass matched neither Richard nor Emily. It belonged to someone else entirely. Someone who had been careful but not careful enough. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. If Richard hadn't acted alone, then who else was involved? And why? The investigation reopened, leading Clara down a darker path than she could have imagined. She traced the fingerprint to a man named Victor Kane, a private investigator with a shady reputation. Victor specialized in digging up secrets and burying them just as quickly. When Clara tracked him down, he denied any involvement in Emily's death. "I was hired to find dirt on her," he confessed reluctantly. "Not kill her. That wasn't part of the deal." "Who hired you?" Clara demanded. Victor hesitated, then whispered a name that made Clara's blood run cold. Laura, Richard's secretary. It turned out Laura had more to gain from Emily's death than anyone realized. She and Richard had been having an affair for months, and Laura saw Emily as the only obstacle standing in the way of their future together. She had orchestrated everything: the forged alibi, the anonymous emails, even hiring Victor to intimidate Emily into staying silent. But when Emily refused to back down, Laura took matters into her own hands. Laura was arrested shortly afterward, her calm demeanor finally crumbling under the weight of her guilt. As Clara watched her being led away in handcuffs, she couldn't help but think about the tangled web of lies and betrayal that had led to Emily's tragic death. In the end, justice was served, but it came at a cost. Months later, Clara sat in her office late at night, staring at the photograph of Emily Carter pinned to the bulletin board. She wondered what Emily must have felt in her final moments. Fear? Betrayal? Or perhaps a desperate hope that someone would uncover the truth. Whatever it was, Clara vowed never to forget her. Because in the world of crime and deception, the truth was often the hardest thing to find and the most important thing to protect. But even as the case closed, questions lingered in Clara's mind. Why had Emily stayed with Richard for so long despite his infidelity? What secrets had she been keeping herself? And what did the cryptic note, "You promised," really mean? Clara decided to dig deeper into Emily's past, hoping to uncover the full story behind her tragic death. What she found shocked her. Emily had once been a rising star in investigative journalism, known for exposing corruption in high places. But after marrying Richard, she had abandoned her career, choosing instead to focus on charity work. Some whispered that Richard had pressured her into quitting, fearing her investigations might one day turn toward him. Others believed Emily had grown disillusioned with the cutthroat world of journalism. Whatever the reason, Clara realized that Emily's decision to step away from the spotlight had left her vulnerable to manipulation, to betrayal, and ultimately to violence. As Clara pieced together the fragments of Emily's life, she began to see a woman trapped in a gilded cage, yearning for freedom but unable to break free. The note "You promised" was likely a reference to a secret agreement between Emily and someone close to her. Perhaps it was Richard, promising to change his ways. Or maybe it was someone else entirely, someone who had failed to keep their word. In the end, Clara understood that Emily's death was not just a tale of betrayal, it was a cautionary story about the dangers of silence. By staying quiet, Emily had allowed the people around her to exploit her vulnerabilities, and in doing so, she had sealed her own fate. As the rain began to patter against the window of her office, Clara closed the file on Emily Carter's case. She lit a cigarette, rare indulgence, and exhaled slowly, watching the smoke curl upward like ghosts of the past. Somewhere, in the depths of Ravenswood, the wind carried whispers once again, as if mourning the loss of Emily Carter. But Clara knew better. Those whispers weren't mournful, they were warnings. Warnings that even in the quietest corners of the world, secrets always find a way to come to light.